alternate timelines and worlds. Did you watch Loki episode 6?
Yes, I did.
I freaking love it. I loved what they're doing with Kang.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's as somebody who's worked on like making his own world, making his own comic. That Kang is such a good character because like I've made a character like that similar. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure we've all come up with that kind of character. The guy who knows everything, who's working behind the scenes, who's doing the dirty dealings, or who knows everything, who's guiding to the timeline in a certain direction. And this is the first time I've seen it done on the big screen. It's such a high concept character, but he's presented in such a way that it's fascinating, and just like seeing Loki's reaction to him.
Yeah, he totally did not see that coming. And it was fantastic because seeing that, it was like, wow, it's like his whole world that just.
Yeah, no. Can you imagine that? Like, and the actor, I forget what's the name of the actor that got to play Kang.
What was named Jonathan Majors?
Yeah. Well, depending, maybe he's Kang, but I think he was more Immortus in that situation.
Yeah.
You know, they did a good job of bringing in all the purples and the design, and just his acting, like the things he did. It's like he stole the show in that episode.
He did, especially with that huge cliffhanger at the end. I was like, okay.
And you know, let's be honest, the biggest cliffhanger, that one that we didn't see coming, Loki return in season 2.
Yeah, because all the Marvel shows are just for one season or limited series.
Yeah.
So to get two was like, whoa, this is gonna be interesting.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And the thing is, like, I love the concepts they were doing. You got like Croaky, you got Frog Thor or Throg. You got like classic comic book Loki. I love it. Like, he's basically a version of Loki if he was more into his own magic.
Yeah.
And like everything they're doing with Aliyah, it's like, I hear people like, oh, you know, it's such a poorly designed or written show.
No, it's not.
Look, I find that YouTube, especially the whole like fandom menace aspect of it, they just hate on everything. Like, they can't just sit back and enjoy something.
Well, they're not open to new ideas because they're so in tune in what it should be in the comics. And they said, oh, we need to translate as the movies, or the television series. But here's the thing. When you get a writer to do, the movies or the televisions, they have their own ideas.
Mm-hmm.
They want to incorporate some ideas, that they want themselves or the studio wants, So sometimes, you have to do a little bit balancing. You're like, okay, here's what I should worry about the fans versus here should I worry about what the studio is going to say. So it's going to be a balanced act because you want a little bit of both.
Yeah, exactly. I remember somebody was telling me basically this show was a cross between Doctor Who and The Good Place.
I would say that's accurate.
Yeah. And like, I like what they've been explaining. Like, the reason why there's no alternate timelines is because somebody's been keeping certain timelines from happening because they lead to chaos. And I love the fact that the next show that's going to be happening is What If.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy.
Yeah. That What If is going to be very interesting. Like, I think some of the ones that they confirmed is like Marvel Zombies, which will be interesting. There's What If Killmonger saved Iron Man.
Yeah.
There's What If T'Challa was Star-Lord. And I think there's also one like where Spider-Man is Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah, that's another one. But there's also one where Peggy Carter takes Super Soldier Serum and she becomes Captain Britain.
She goes Captain Carter or maybe Captain Britain. I also know I saw one where I think in that one as well, Steve also becomes the Hulk. Like first he starts off as Iron Man and then he goes all hulking. I'm like, you know what? I'm all for this dynamic. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
Just bring everyone back. And I think there's also one is what if Hawkeye shot the arrow and killed Thor?
Yeah, that definitely read somewhere that was going to happen.
Yeah. Look, what if is gonna. I always enjoyed Marvel What Ifs, and I'm really curious to see where it's gonna go. You know, so as like tangent, there's one Marvel What If, especially that I really liked. Well, two actually, but for different reasons. The first one is What If Spider-Girl, which spawned the MC2, which I still adore. I actually have a Spider-Girl in here, because she's my all-time favorite comic book character. I love those books. I love that character. All power to her. Now, surprisingly, my second favorite comic book character is Blink from The Exile, because that was such a good book. Like, my big superheroes are like people like really good books, really good runs, long ass runs, but that no one talks about today.
Well, unfortunately, it's a sad state of affairs because those runs that you and I talk about, again, like I said, nobody knows about. And what's interesting was whenever these big movies come out, they release these collections that have these particular runs. So sometimes people will buy them and like, this is a good run. Maybe I should actually pay attention to this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can actually read, what happened before then that leads to this collection.
Oh yeah, for sure. And The Exiles is actually pretty interesting considering we're talking about Kang, because it turns out that the person who did you ever read The Exiles?
Yes, it did.
Okay, so the main concept. People pulled out of different realities, made into a team, and sent to different realities to fix them. Oh my God, it's the TVA. I just made the connection.
I was waiting until you actually realized that.
I actually just realized it. My God, the TVA is basically another version of the Exiles, and of course, Kang runs both.
See, this is what happens, folks. This is what happens when you suddenly realize it's actually two storylines combined.
Yeah, but the difference was with Exiles is that the team was comprised of alternate reality versions of different characters. Loki is just Loki, but the Exiles was like they brought in Blink from Age of Apocalypse. They brought in the son of Magneto and Rogue from an alternate reality. They brought in the coolest version of Morph. And like an actually really cool version of Mimic. They brought in Nightcrawler and Wanda Maximoff's daughter, which apparently she became so popular they brought her into the 616 for a while.
Oh, that's right. I remember this.
Yeah. And it's like there was a lot of cheesecake in that comic as well, because many good female characters. Funny enough, one of the first times I've seen a good lesbian couple in the series too. You had, I think, Firestar, who started a relationship with a Mary Jane, who was a Spider Woman in an alternate reality.
That's right. I do recall this now. And it was a very good arc, as I recall.
I think the reason why they put the Exiles to the side is because the Exiles is mostly comprised of X-Men characters. Yeah. And they kind of just said, like, well, we don't want to touch X-Men or anything related to them during, the whole point, like, oh, well, Marvel doesn't have the X-Men movie rights at this time. Because if you remember, like, the Exiles didn't even come into any type of relevance during Secret Wars 2. Yeah. Which just made no sense to me, considering, like, this Earths colliding into each other is definitely up the Exiles' alley. Anyway, back to my earlier point, there was one what if that really stuck with me. It was a what if Civil War. Oh, you know the one I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah,
I know.
It starts off with Tony Stark at the grave of Captain America, and some guy shows up and he gives him a vision of what would have happened if Tony Stark was sincere when he was talking to Captain America. That was the only difference, and that allowed them to create basically the heroic age much earlier. And like you see like how happy everyone is, and now Tony is haunted by what could have been. And that character with the eyes who showed him the vision, like obviously no one's ever brought him back. I'm just saying, like, that is such an interesting character, somebody who can show you what could have been. And then now with a what if series coming out, now with like what could have been, these different realities, I'm like, I just always love that story. I always love that what if, just like seeing where he went wrong and what could have been. That always like touched me, that story.
Yeah, I think if it is tweaked a little bit, it could definitely fit into this because you obviously remember Captain America: Civil War. You know, easily fit in there.
Oh yeah, but that would be more of a something for the main continuity and less something that would work in what if, because it would have to be like the Watcher in the situation. And I like that we're actually getting the Watcher finally.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. I always felt he was working, you know, in the background, seeing everything that obviously sees everything that's happening.
Yeah.
He chooses not to, you know,
Interfere,
intervene
yeah.
or yeah.
I do like that. I always thought that Stan Lee was the Watcher because that would have been hilarious. But it turns out like he's just kind of like hanging out with the Watchers. It's like, hey, which one of you gonna drive me home? You know, I'd like to think Stan Lee's right now up in heaven talking to the Watchers and like telling him all the stories.
Yeah, like he was in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And that time I was a mailman.
You were what?
I don't know. There's a line from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 where Stan Lee says,
and that time I was a mailman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait for the next Guardians.
I can't wait either. I also can't wait for the soundtrack.
Oh yeah, no, the soundtrack for that's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Like all the Guardians movies have great soundtracks. You know what's gonna be hilarious? You know what I'm expecting is gonna happen in Guardians 3?
What?
Rocket's gonna know more about Earth pop culture than Peter Quill.
That's true because he's been on Earth longer than Peter is.
Yeah, it's like he's been on Earth recently. And like Rocket brings in all this Earth music, like he brings in like recent pop and he's like, yeah, I like the sound. And it's just driving Peter crazy.
Oh gosh.
It would like just be like such a fun dynamic shift. It's like and like Rocket's like quoting like shows Peter doesn't even know. It's like how do you know these things? I've been on Earth longer than you, buddy. Oh God, no. You know what would be the ultimate joke for on a Guardians movie? When the Guardians show up to save people, they're like, look, it's the Avengers.
Oh, that would be great.
And Peter's like, no, we're the Guardians. And Rocket's like, speak for yourself. I'm an Avenger.
Oh God.
Like, I just always thought of that. I'm like, that just would work so well in the Guardians movies.
That's true.
And you know what the worst thing is? Like, I'm pretty sure right now in the galaxy, everyone's heard of the Avengers at this point.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because you gotta remember, they brought in the Ravagers and they brought in like a bunch of people from other planets. So obviously the story of the battle on Earth against Thanos was spread everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's just gonna be such a perfect moment if they do that. Like, don't worry, we're here to save you. Look, Mom, it's the Avengers.
We're the Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians.
And you just get Rocket and Nebula. Nah, I'm both. She's got it right. Oh man. You know, if somebody listens to this and uses that joke, you're welcome. You don't have to pay me for it. Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. Yeah. It's actually interesting watching Loki because you see, you know, a version of him that hasn't really, in a sense, grown up yet, because he still wants a throne, especially since he's from 2012.
Mm-hmm.
But during the course of the show, you're like, okay, he's starting to change because now he's actually caring.
Yeah, because he's in love with himself.
Yes, which I always suspected. I
Okay,
always
look, Loki falling in love with a variant of himself is the most Loki thing that could happen.
it is.
I
It is.
remember there was an issue of Deadpool where he ran into different versions of himself, and one of them was like a female Deadpool, and they kiss, and like, yeah, this is weird. And I'm like looking at Loki kiss another Loki. I'm like, no, no, this is not weird. This is in character.
Well, it makes sense for him. It makes sense for
Yeah, no, it's like it's an alternate version of himself. And I think they even did the joke so a while back when they had like two Lokis in the comic at one time where like he met a female version of himself and like he's hanging out with Thor and Jane Carter Thor. Yeah, Jane Thor. And like the picture's just been spreading around 4chan a little bit, and like the Lokis are just getting along so well. I'm like, yeah, yeah. If Loki's gonna fall in love with anyone, it's gonna be a version of himself.
him.
God, there's all now that I'm also thinking. There's this picture I saw not too long ago, where it's like a photo of Odin's son. I must tell you, you're adopted, and it's a picture of alligator Loki and just like loud, like confused alligator noises. I'm convinced that the croaky is from a reality where they're all animals.
I could totally see that.
Well, we have Marvel apes, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, where everyone's a type of monkey, and then like, what was it? Doctor Doom is a baboon or something, or he's one of those like monkeys with like the big flashy butts. And Doom decided to destroy the entire reality just for that insult. Oh God. Are you excited for seeing Doctor Doom in the cinematic universe?
I would love to see him because I like to see a version that's done right.
Oh God, yes. And like he's got to be completely chewing the scenery every time he's on screen. Like he has got to be so over the top comic book villainy, I that no one will believe. I want to see him try to take over the world because somebody snubbed him in a line. Okay, Doom doesn't need to be like thought-provoking. Doom just needs to be Doom.
Yeah, stick to the comics. You know, that's why we have that Fantastic Four movie.
Oh yeah, no, I can't wait. I'm gonna be honest. I can't wait to see the Fantastic Four. I'm not looking forward to seeing them integrate the X-Men.
You know what? I'm not either. Because I'll tell you why. Because for so long, the X-Men have been in their own separate universe, and I think to include them now, it would feel very much out of place.
Here's the thing: if you say they're from an alternate reality, I'm fine. Multiversal shenanigans, cool. But if you say that the mutants have been around this whole time, I'm like, ugh.
I'm like, no. I'm like, has anyone seen them?
Yeah.
Why haven't we seen Wolverine or Storm or whatever?
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like we got a Hugh Jackman cameo, we know it's coming. But like Deadpool works because he's so like bananas at what his movies are. But like I never liked the idea of the X-Men integrating into the MCUs because the X-Men just don't work with something like the Avengers existing in the same universe.
I agree.
Because like there's so much like stupidity mode enabled that needs to happen in order for like all the hate that the mutants are receiving to be validated.
Yeah, and if you look at the Avengers, obviously, a couple of people that they call them enhanced. If you look at the Maximoffs, they're obviously mutants. They've been mutants, from the X-Men, but they're Avengers. So how do you explain that?
Okay, let's be honest, it is really hard to come up with names for people with powers that hasn't already been used.
Yeah, so enhanced makes sense.
Yeah. So what was I getting at? Yeah, just like the problem with him is then they have to explain Magneto being from World War II at this point, and like he'd be like, God knows how old at this point.
Yeah.
And I find like, how do I put this? The problem with mutants, I feel, is that no one ever actually tackles it logically. The problem is that it's accept mutants or kill mutants. There's no in between.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. There's no real common ground, I feel.
No. Like,
Because, I think we're definitely at an age where we're accepting more, diversity. So why isn't there, common ground between mutants and humans? Why isn't there that? Because it can't be just one or the other. Why can't we coexist?
yeah. And the worst thing is that the mutants actively try to separate themselves further and further from humanity. Like mutants come up with their own communities, they come up with words like flat scans. And the problem with that is that the mutants are pushing themselves out. But the thing is, mutants aren't necessarily guaranteed to have mutant children. And humans at any point could have a mutant child.
Yes.
The
So
fact that they're, which means they're still the same species. And
yeah,
they're acting like homo superior. Like that always bugged me about mutants, and that there's like there is us and them. Like the X-Men talk about, living together with humans. You are human still. And there's no acknowledging of the fact that mutants can be dangerous. Okay, I remember there was an issue of X-Men or Avengers, and like they find a mutant who is like unstoppable. Like what was, and he was so bad. Like, and there's this thing where Maria Hill says, this was on one of Nick Fury's top 5 apocalypses. There'd be a mutant who would be born one day who would just accidentally destroy the world. And it was so bad that one mutant went back in time and prevented that mutant's parents from meeting each other, meaning he would never exist. And that's how they resolved the situation. So don't tell me that we need to accept all mutants. And I know this sounds like horrible considering today's what's going on in today, but the fact of the matter is mutations and activations of powers can happen at any time. And it could happen to a variety of people, stable individuals and unstable individuals. What if, we're going to go for the classic what if example. Okay, what if some kid who has problems suddenly develops fire powers at school? What's going to happen? And then there wasn't a comic in Ultimate X-Men that freaked me out. Like it was so good, but it's the perfect example of the dangers of mutants to the point where Charles Xavier had to completely cover it up. The story was a kid gained the ability that he would produce a gas, like completely colorless, completely like it's just a pheromone that whatever organic life, sentient life came in contact with it would instantly die and melt away. So he woke up one day and he couldn't find his parents. He just found their clothes on the floor. And he slowly starts walking to school, and cars start crashing, people start vanishing. He gets to school and it's like, where is everybody? And then he sees his friends melt away. And what happens is Wolverine finds him, and Wolverine can survive this. So he sits down with the kid and he explains to him what's going on. And he offers him a beer. And the kid's like, well, how am I supposed to stop this? It's like, Wolverine's like, that's why they sent me. And he just tells the kid, finish your beer. And I'm like, that was such a powerful story. And I'm like, yeah, that never comes up when we're discussing mutants. That somebody like that could be born at any time in the Marvel Universe. So you can understand why people are afraid of mutants. But the X-Men, all the mutants, they'll never own up to that.
Well, that's the thing. I think there should be a line where they do own up to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hate to get off of this for a second, but if you remember Civil War, that storyline, you remember, obviously the horrible accident happened with some, superheroes, and some deaths involved, and all of a sudden the government wants a registration act, and Tony Stark is behind it because he's like, yeah, we need to be held accountable for these actions because we're no different. We no different from the bad guys. And of course, Captain America says this is we give up our civil liberties and all that, but Tony did have a point.
Yeah.
Much as Captain did have a point because this is the world we live in, where we have to be held accountable for our actions. And unfortunately, Cap, who's very much, part of the past, as stands for liberty and everything, but he didn't see the other side of it.
No. Cap is an incredible individual, but he's also very stubborn. In that even in the movies, he, like the Civil War movie, a lot of it could have been over with had they, like Tony made every effort to appeal to Steve. Like Steve was just like in the mindset, I gotta save my friend. And he put everything else in jeopardy. He got his friends arrested. Like Scott Lang, poor Scott. Like the only reason he was helping is like, oh my God, Captain America is asking me to help him. God, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, Tony was definitely trying to, to at least reach some common ground. You could even tell that when they met, Black Panther and Cap and Sam were arrested. He was trying to reach out, saying, "Look, we need you. All right, I don't want to turn this into a fight."
Yeah, but what happened. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, comics always go to let's fight. They always go to we need conflict, we need battle. They never go, what would happen if we reached the common ground? But what would also happen to the threat of the common ground? Here is a concept for an X-Men story. What if somebody brought back their registration numbers, but they had the mutants run it? In the sense that, here, you guys register everybody, you run it, but you prove to us that you're keeping everybody under control. And what would happen, another idea, is somebody says like, okay, I want to open up schools to help mutants suppress, control, or get rid of their powers. And we're going to open up these schools across the states or across all the USA. And it's like, yeah, the goal of these schools is to teach mutants to either suppress or to get rid of their powers in any way that's humanely possible. And just watching the X-Men react completely negatively to that. But on the other side, seeing the students who actually go to those schools, like kids who, like Rogue's life was hell for a long time. You have people like that, people with powers that are ruining their lives, that make a regular life impossible. And even if they were to integrate with mutants, it would still just be as bad.
Yeah.
What would happen if the mutants' values was thrown right back in their faces?
Actually, that'd be a very interesting storyline.
Yeah. But instead, what are we getting right now? Hey, the mutants got their own island where it's party time all the time and no one can die.
No, I think what really boils down to is there needs to be real life consequences to these actions because the mutants, they definitely need to know, obviously what they're capable of and how much damage they can do.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, right now, the mutants are doing everything to avoid the consequences of their actions. They're doing like, we're the victims, we're gonna show how powerful we are. But the problem is just reading the X-Men comics right now and knowing how Marvel is, I'm waiting for that island to blow up. Maybe within the next 3 years, 2 years, 10 years, somebody's gonna nuke that island. Everyone's gonna die and the mutants are gonna be in a horrible situation because that is what comics are.
Yeah, I think by then, somebody in the government's going to say, "Look, we can't control them, but what if we help them?"
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? It's like, look, let's follow Charles Xavier's example. He has a school out there for mutants. Why don't we open up schools to actually help mutants develop their powers?
Yeah. And
So,
then like, oh, they're training the kids to be weapons because I know it sounds sad, but I could just kind of predict whatever they would
yeah, yeah, there's a conflict right there. But people, the government's legitimately saying, no, we're not doing that. We're not turning them into weapons, right? We don't want to bring the world to destruction.
do.
Because at some point, if we keep doing this, if we keep fighting each other, not only are we going to kill one another, we're going to destroy the whole planet. There's nobody going to be left. So
Oh yeah.
we got to find a way to coexist here, and we can't do that. No, that neither side is talking.
hmm All in all, I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the X-Men long run. I don't feel they work very well in the Marvel universe just to be brought out of nowhere, and it just having mutants exist completely destabilizes the world. In the comics, it would work. In a live-action film series, there's just too much to keep track of.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, because now like we have the Widows. I don't know if you watched the new Black Widow movie.
I did.
What did you think of it overall?
You know what? Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very interesting concept. And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, you should probably do see it. You obviously have your opinions. Personally, I felt they should have had a solo Black Widow film years earlier. But that's
Yo,
just
this movie would have been better if it came out like 4 or 5 years ago. Let's be honest.
if it came out like after Civil War, it would totally made sense.
Yeah, because that's where it fits in the timeline. Now it just feels awkward. It feels like an afterthought at this point.
Yeah.
But like spoilers, stop here and skip where you need to. But now they reveal there are like trained with Black Widows across the world. They're free of control. I'm not a fan of what they did with Taskmaster just because I like what Taskmaster is. But then again, kind of like what they did with the Maddener. They can be like, hey, here's our like first take on it. Oh, you didn't like it? We'll do another take that explains this is the real Taskmaster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because how hard is to say that, oh, the way he created this Taskmaster was that they actually got the actual Taskmaster and used him as the model for this. It's not hard. And like no one needs to be butthurt over it. Like I find the character was fun. Like seeing Taskmaster or a version of him in film was just fun. Like that, the mimicking, the doing all that. But we need one that's the actual Taskmaster itself. Like we need the character, not just the set of powers.
Yeah. Well, it could still happen.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. The thing I like about the character, like what is he basically trains goons.
Yeah.
It's like he's the one who supplies hired goons. I just love that term. I love the personal touch of hired goons. Hired goons. But yeah, it's a good movie. But now it sets up like there's a bunch of these deadly assassins across the world.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be a lot to keep track of, but we'll see what they do with it. And also, what was it the Red Guardian? Just so much fun on screen.
He's fantastic. I thought the actor did a great job, and he totally was the character for me in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And like, there is one thing. It's like, wait, did he and Cap actually fight?
Yeah, that was like, no, he didn't, because remember that scene I know you talking about. And he was like, yeah, there's no way in hell because he's this old. No, no.
Steve would have still been frozen. Now, if you told me he fought another Captain America, like, because we also confirmed that Obadiah, I think was his name, from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. What if he fought him?
Well, that's entirely possible. It could happen, but I think with the time frame, if you remember correctly, his Captain America took place in the 50s and maybe early 60s. So
yeah, I'm just thinking like something like that would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, you know what? I really liked Captain Falcon.
yes,
Like the design of Falcon Captain America. I just like that suit design. It's pretty good.
it was great because meshing both the images together was like, wow, looks great. I was a bit nervous when I saw the costume, but when I saw it in action, I was like, okay.
It works.
And he looks damn good in it, and I like the message at the end of the episode. So I was like, this is good.
Yeah, politicians do better. But overall, like I find like all the Marvel shows have been hit one after the other. I'm really looking forward to their building this multiverse up. Let's do it. So this has been another episode of Nova Files, a quick little quickie with me and Ian. I hope you guys have had a good time about our going from Batman, the OG Batman comics, to talking about the efficacies of the mutant plagues.
There's a
So,
lot, guys.
thanks a lot, everybody.